Hi, I'm Fatu, and I'm so excited to present the second edition of the Crossover Show, which is an annual recap of the biggest moments in African tech. And this second edition is sponsored by MoneyPoint, Africa's latest unicorn. And I am joined with some really exciting guests. Oluwatosin Olaseinde, who is the CEO of Money Africa, also known as Miss Money with the Vibes. Osarimen Osamuyi, who is the founder of The Subtext, and Seye Bandele, who is the CEO and co-founder of Paid HR. So we're going to be going down different segments, right? And we'll chronicle all the significant things that happen in the ecosystem. But first of all, the media moments. We've got 3 big media moments from this year. One was MoneyPoint becoming a unicorn. I feel like there has been a unicorn drought in the ecosystem for the longest time. They finally joined the elite rank of unicorns. Flutterwave, OPay, Wave, MNT Harlan, Cheaper Cash. So what did you think that this meant or this means for the ecosystem, given that it's been a long time coming? People were very shocked that we're even still minting unicorns. Like, Sherry, I'll start with you.
Recently, I've stopped using all of the tags that we were sort of just inducted into using in African tech, things like pre-seed, seed, Series A. Yeah, these are globally accepted terms, but in Africa, our context is a little bit different. So it's just like, growth.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity for growth to happen? For MoneyPoint, I think it was expected, right? MoneyPoint was doing a madness in terms of from last year to now. We could see what they were doing in terms of their own growth and how important they became a staple product in the lives of poor, rich, young, old. So it wasn't a surprise at all for me that MoneyPoint was able to achieve unicorn status.
And Tosin, you do money all the time. Like, what did this mean for the ecosystem? Because they were able to raise over $100 million. So what do you think that means for us?
It means a lot, but let's look at this. Look at all the unicorns in the list, right? If you look at the data, over 5 of them are actually in fintech. So what's that telling you? That's also telling you where the money is going to. Money follows money. So we can see a pattern here. So now the other question that also brings is, who's going to be next? Is it going to be another fintech, or are we going to see a change where someone is going to become from health tech or from any other sector? Now, in terms of the flush of capital coming into the market, it's very, very important. I mean, subsequent to the raise, I saw that they poached the CFO of Stanbic. Stanbic is big. For a startup to poach Stanbic CFO, that is massive.
Osarimen, do you think we're going to see another unicorn at some point that is not a fintech?
10 years ago, the unicorn tag was relatively rare.
Yes.
As soon as it becomes a thing to aim for, a thing we use to judge the health of an ecosystem, then across the board, across the world, everybody starts to sort of optimize for it. And so I don't think too much about the unicorn tag. What I'd say is most interesting about this is that the tech ecosystem is no longer Yabacon Valley. Our companies are now impacting the economy, impacting society, in some cases impacting policy. They now matter in some systemic way. And that's the real story for me.
You know what I found really interesting? When the news came out and everybody just felt like this was an overnight thing, because I think for some people, their introduction to MoneyPoint was post CBN's, their policy, and then of course, MoneyPoint taking advantage of that market. And that's when most people now came to find out about the existence of MoneyPoint, right? But they've been in the business for like 10 plus years. It is not an overnight thing. Like you do have to grind. So one of the biggest news as well this year was Binance versus Nigerian. I feel like this particular news moment ran through the entire year. 2 Binance officials, because Binance said they didn't want to describe them as executives. US citizen Tigran Gambaryan and Nadeem Anjarwalla, who is a British Kenyan national. They came into Nigeria to have conversations with the government, which is usual for tech companies that operate here in Nigeria, for them to have executives or staff come once in a while for stakeholder management, right? And both of them got detained, and it just kickstarted a month-long process of the government versus Binance versus the US weighing in, and of course Nadeem Anjarwalla disappearing from custody. But one of the things that I think outraged lots of Nigerians was, what does this mean for the international community and other foreign companies that want to operate here?
Initially, I thought it was a joke. Like, I seriously did not believe that happened. Like, I literally had to go online and check for credible sources to confirm it because I thought, it was just gossip, or I really did not think it was true. And indeed, it is true. Like, it actually happened. Investors' confidence is a very critical metric when you're measuring how your country is perceived. Let me give you an example. I recently found out that, in actual fact, African countries do not default as much as developed economies, right? I did not know. Apparently, developed economies default more on loans than we do. And despite this fact, we pay a premium for Eurobonds. Like, Nigeria went into the Eurobond market and we got like 10%. In the past, we used to do like 8% or even lower. Now, where's the relationship? This is the role of perception. So they said, oh, Ghana defaulted on the loan, and because of that, we are just one homogeneous market and they're going to treat us the same way. Every African player has a role and responsibility to ensure that we critically guard that confidence, right? Because one brush of stroke affects everyone. So I saw it more from an investor's confidence angle and seeing how that could impact future or potential investors coming into the market. How are we perceived? What does it make us look like? I think that's the key thing that stood out for me in the whole case.
And Seye, did you have conversations with investors about what was going on with Binance versus Nigeria? As a founder here, and especially, just thinking long term, at some point you need to go speak to investors about, investing in the company or even investing in Nigeria. Was this one of the things that made you go, okay, this is like a head scratching moment?
So there's so much that we don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know what will happen. I don't think that people in their right minds will just detain somebody for no reason. There must be stuff that we don't know in there. But on the flip side, we need to be very careful about the, especially when we operate in Africa and we rely a lot on foreign direct investment. So we need to be more careful in curating the perception that these external players are having about our ecosystem. And that was the main concern for me.
One of the things I thought was really interesting was that they were able to keep them for that long. And also, where is Mr. Anjawala? He left the country and nobody knew where he went to.
Well, I don't know. I don't work in security.
And it's also very important to point out that, I'm speaking for myself, I do not have any problem whatsoever with prosecution. I think it was more of the transparency or just knowing that, did they break a law? Did they break a rule? How are they going to go about it? And I just did not, get enough information about that.
The two M's and two of Nigeria's favorite big tech companies are scaling back, right? Meta did a lot of that last year where they laid off about 35 of their staff, of their already limited staff, and also reduced their office. And of course, Microsoft this year announced that they are literally shutting down a huge portion of their Nigeria operations. Laying off about 200 jobs were expected to be lost because of the shutdown. And they also expect to reduce their office space in Ikoyi. And I think Nigerians understood Microsoft's decision to do that. But when they found out that they were taking most of that work to Kenya, then it became a problem. Because with us, if you're living in Nigeria, like, leave the continent, like, don't go somewhere else, because that says something is wrong with, our own environment, right? Yeah. So, Osariman, you used to work at Meta.
So did you?
So, like, what do you think about the fact that big tech companies are literally packing up and leaving?
We can think about them as American big tech companies. We can also think about them as global companies searching for a return on invested capital.
Yes.
During exciting times in the stock markets, when everybody's on a bull run and everybody's excited about growth, it makes sense. There's a business case for investing in regions that maybe are not there from a revenue perspective, that are not ready to be fully commercialized. As that begins to change, and you probably see this also with international investors, as the core business comes under quote unquote question or threat, then there's a retreat to quality. What I will say is that while this has happened globally, it seems to be most severe on the continent. That is, these companies are probably still going to keep making some investments in India, Latin America, Southeast Asia. Africa is, still proving out itself as a commercial base, and so it's not entirely surprising. About moving to Kenya, it's like, have you tried doing business in Nigeria versus other markets on the continent? I don't think there's too much to say about that. It's just, a reflection of where we are as a country, as a continent, as a region.
And what about you, Seye?
So I think that, the things that, we've seen in the past 12 months, the context of this discussion is the past 12 months, right? So I'll keep it at that. everybody complains about devaluation and the effects of the macroeconomics this year, and just kind of write every negative thing that happened under that bracket. But I think that many of these things are also like ripple effect from bad decisions from even far beyond 12 months ago, or 18 months ago, or even 24 months ago. Back when I worked in e-commerce, right, when e-commerce was the hottest thing in Nigerian tech, I think that a lot of investors who signaled, oh, we're going to Africa, we're going to look for the promising companies to invest in Africa, didn't do a good job of evaluating the market, and just kind of, I don't want to say they overestimated, but, they read it wrong. Most of them did. I worked in e-commerce, right, the three big guys. And, we had, Rocket Internet, Chinevik, Tiger Global, all of these guys who had gone and seen how things were working in China and India and said, oh, okay, where's the next closest market that looks like this? Oh, let's go to Africa. And then, they started, putting money in all these companies saying, okay, we're going to be printing unicorns in the next 3, 4, 5 years. But that did not happen because there was a lot of infrastructure that did not exist, right? And you cannot fix government policy or economic infrastructure problems with venture capital. You cannot, right?
Yeah.
The country has to fix it. So I think many of those things, and then, the offshoots of those where we got many other companies raising at extremely high valuations that the market could not really support from the past 5 years, 2017, 2019 into 2022 and 2023. And then we started seeing the real value on the continent and how much work needed to be done. And guys like MoneyPoint and Co. Extracting the value from where the real value is.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that, so guys like Microsoft and Co, yes, it was great that at the bull run time, like, oh, okay, where is the best place to situate our office? Oh, it's Nigeria. This population is there, economy is huge, etc, and they come and sit in those countries. And, now they start to ask themselves tough questions and like, oh, okay, where are we getting the real value? What's the best way to spend our capital? Do we need this level of operations on this continent at this point in time? Maybe we need to grow with the continent a little bit and stuff like that. So I think it's less about knee-jerk reactions to what happened in the economy this year and more about how did we adjudge this continent to perform in terms of the economy over the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
The next segment, startup shutdowns, the peer, which was one of the biggest ones from this year. They shut down after 3 years, or they made the announcement that they were shutting down after 3 years. Of course, their main product was the wallet API, right? And I remember when the news came out, of course, the founders didn't want to give any other kind of release or comments to the press outside what they had written in their blog. But they said they were going to be returning money to investors, I think when there was a bit of pressure from the investor side, right? But most people said the business was doomed from the start because like wallet APIs are not just products that have product market fits here on the continent. And Seye, I'm so curious to hear your thoughts about this.
This will happen a lot, right? When a market is evolving, products will come, products will go. I think it was important that they tried to do that. And now all of us here know that, okay, for a wallet API product to kind of work and achieve some scale, there needs to be some level of proliferation in demand, right? In terms of the platforms who would rather use a wallet API than build their own API. Than build their own wallets. One
of the really interesting things for me is that they raised $2.1 million, which actually shows that, there were investors that were willing to bet on this particular market. And one of the things that the founders said, in addition to the fact that they couldn't find product market fit, was they also had a bit of compliance issues as well, right? Where that they had acquired some licenses, but they still operated in some kind of gray area that didn't let them scale as quickly as possible. I mean, you also operate in the finance space as well, but I'm really curious as to how you deal with compliance, especially in the work that you do.
I mean, we have third parties in terms of your SEC licenses and things like that. We have third parties that we liaise with in order to get licenses. I mean, it's very, very important that you need to have license for the work that you're doing. So you have to get it. So
if you have product market fit and have regulatory issues, is that still one of the reasons why a startup can shut down? And of course, it's not about the peer.
Yeah, absolutely. Regulatory issues is like such a big deal because if the regulators of the country you're operating in are saying that you can't operate, there's nothing you can do. Like, remember what happened with Flutterwave? It wasn't in Kenya that eventually they got their license, that they had to put it on pause. So if regulation is saying you can't operate, then
Mara, they raised about $23 million from Alameda Research, which was the trading arm of FTX. You know, we all know what happened there. Coinbase Ventures and over 300 investors at a pre-money valuation of $70 million. And after 2 years, they ran out of cash without a product. And the CEO registered a new entity in early 2004, leaving two co-founders who eventually left the company and claimed that the CEO, Chinyere Nnadi, decided to avoid responsibility because by creating a new company, so he didn't have to deal with everything that was going on with Mara. So $23 million later, $70 million in valuation, they ran out of cash in 2 years. Seye, if you had $23 million in the bank, what does that runway look like for you? And how is it possible that something like this can happen in a startup?
First of all, you know, when I read the Mara story, one of the most mind-blowing stories I'd read in African tech, and especially because, you know, $23 million, no product. That's a little bit insane, right? That's insane. I could not believe it, right? Again, hopefully, you know, like they say, everything has context, right? If the CEOs or the people with direct involvement in the matter tell us more someday, maybe we can gain a little bit more context. But from what's available in public domain, $23 million with no product, everybody needs to be questioned, right? You know, from investor down to founder, down to, okay, no customers, right? I mean, you know, maybe all the employees, right? Like, what was happening here? $23 million. If I had $23 million, we've raised only $500K, and you can at least you can see our product, right? And we're helping people get paid across the continent. So, you know, just multiply the context of that by, you know, what $23 million would have done for us. So my position is that, you know, everybody is a little bit complicit in that story, right? 2 years is a long enough time for questions to be asked.
Everybody, including founders, investors.
Yes, that were involved in that matter. Like, if you invested in a company and 6 months into it, there's no product, and you can't do, you know, there's no investor update to say, okay, this is the number of customers we have now. And if it was all lies, for instance, you just ask some questions. Hey, let's see what you're struggling with and things like that. And you have another 6 months and another 6 months and another 6 months to make 2 years. And then all of a sudden, guys, we're so sorry. And then, you know, there's so many things that so many people need to be questioned in there. Of course, at the end of the day, we've spoken in this discussion about perception. It affects people like us who are players in the ecosystem, right? Whether it's crypto or whatever, the enveloping, it's African ecosystem, and we operate there. It can destroy investor confidence. A lot of things can happen in there. So at the end of the day, people need to start getting, you know, held accountable for things like this. I mean, and I'm not even saying in a way of reparative action. I'm talking about during the process of it, right? And also, I understand things around, you know, once you're invested in a business, you just leave them to go and execute. But you need to be able to ensure that you have some sort of duty. They call it fiduciary duty. To your own investors, because the investors have investors, right? To be able to say, we have insights into this matter, and before it goes completely bad, $23 million, you guys, you know, something could have been done earlier.
And one interesting thing, his Chinyere Nnadi, the CEO, his co-founders, wrote in a note to investors saying, Mara could have been something extraordinary, but its CEO took it down a dark and rotten path. You know, for co-founders to actually write that about a CEO, and of course, he decided to go create a new company called Jara, which I just thought was like very ironic, right? Jara is like extra for, you know, like non-Nigerians watching, is extra. And it just reminded me of that, you know, that LeBron James meme where he's like, here's one more for you. that was exactly what you reminded me of. And sorry, man, what are your thoughts on Mara, and what happened here? Because I feel like they actually squandered a really good opportunity to build something really great, because they were able to raise $23 million during the crypto boom, right? And of course, FTX was still like the number one crypto platform at the time before the CEO landed in jail with Diddy. So like, how do you get those kinds of investors and then just squander that?
That sounds like a question for the founder. What I will say though is that in a capital environment where founders have a lot more leverage, so there's lots of money looking for high quality companies to back, you see investors around the world looking for where to find a return, so investing in emerging markets which they don't perhaps understand as much, and often based on less rigorous analysis. These things are bound to happen in some volume, and they happen in pretty much every region. In this case specifically, I think I was looking at the founder's background, and I thought it was interesting that from a box ticking perspective, all of the things that an investor might use to de-risk an investment, the founder did have the right background. I think that's part of the story on some level.
Next up founder was Splits. Splits is or was an exciting startup for me, because I think they did such, or at least the promise was they were going to literally connect landlords and tenants, and then make it possible for you to be able to pay rent monthly in Lagos. And of course, I feel like every time I open Twitter these days, someone is like wailing about rent prices in Lagos or how difficult it is to even find a home. So the entire promise was about providing rental management solutions for landlords and tenants. And recently, they removed the co-founder and CEO, Adetola Adesami, in March of this year, after an audit of the company's finances, right? And I know a big part of the story kind of focused on what happened afterwards, where you saw headlines like Splits replaced CEO over claims of misappropriating $1.5 million. But that's sensational, and people love that, but like some of the things I actually like to focus on a little bit as well, or at least like, pay a little bit more attention to, is a startup that came out of the gate saying, and I think they've existed for like maybe 7 years at this point.
Wow, Split?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah. So say we are going to make life easier for Lagosians, where you don't have to pay rent a year up front, or for some landlords that actually ask for 2 years up front. We're going to make it possible for you to be able to pay like monthly. And this seemed like a really good like deal, right, for people. So I'm just like wondering, right, like did they stand a chance?
I think this probably comes back to the infrastructure discussion we're discussing, because before Split, in that form, there was fiber.
Yes.
I was a customer of both early on, because I faced, I guess, the perennial problem that we all do when we move to Lagos. And one of the things that became clear immediately is that Lagos has a real estate supply problem, and whatever you build on top of that is not going to fundamentally solve it. So, if you are building for, if you are offering monthly rentals to consumers, for example, there's a certain class that's implied by that who's going to pay for all of that. The question is, for the highest band in that market, do you have enough high quality supply that they're willing to pay for? Someone who, say, works at a Microsoft and wants to be able to pay their rent monthly for some reason, and they're looking for a place that's close to the office. Do they have supply in Ikoyi? Do you have enough supply? That supply issue, in all my conversations with all the founders who have built in this space, seems to be a recurring one. I'd say if you don't solve the fundamental constraint of building more homes, then Nigeria happens to you.
I want to tell a little bit of a story that helps spotlight what you guys are saying. So I think a week or 2 weeks ago, somebody asked me, Seye, what is going to be the biggest driver of growth in your company over the next 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah.
And I said, it's going to be cultural adoption or a cultural shift. And what that means is, it's not going to be the number of salespeople I'm able to hire or number of markets I'm able to open in or how much marketing money I can spend. Is cultural adoption. And an example is, we recently closed an insurance company. Okay. Now, insurance company, by what you know, is old people. People have been there 30-year careers, 40-year careers. But the guy, the head of HR, I was having a chat with him and said 65% of our workforce are Gen Z, right? Of an insurance company, one of the oldest insurance companies in Nigeria. And what that means is that the Gen Z are the guys who were born into technology. They already know how to use technology to make their work faster and better and more high quality and focus on outcomes rather than process. Millennials and boomers are more about putting in the work, doing the grind daily till you get to your outcomes. But the Gen Z guys came with, they were born into a mature technology space. So what's going to happen in that insurance company is that in the next 5 years, 10 years, these Gen Z guys have grown into managerial roles, and they are going to demand technology. The directors and guys who are heads of HR in those organizations right now, they are the guys who know how to write all the Excel formulas and say, why would I need to change this? I already have something that works. Why would I adopt this technology that is 3 years old and does payroll for maybe 100, 200 companies? Just leave me with my Excel sheets and my banks who help me do my payroll. But in 5 years, that guy would have retired, or at least he's no longer the operational guy. Maybe he's not, right? But the Gen Z guys have grown into managerial positions, and they're like, why am I learning how to do formulas in Excel? There's software for this. Why don't we just pay for the software, right? So that is going to happen. And now 5 years in startup years is a long time, right? But in African ecosystem time, very short. So the supply issue for guys like real estate, the cultural enemy that they are fighting with is that for the longest time in our lives, we've paid rent annually. Right? And, there's just a way we think about rent and real estate in Nigeria. And for a company to try and sort of
wants to disrupt that.
Is not a 7-year conversation. Right? So those on the side of market and adoption, I think are the struggles that Split may have had. On the other side of misappropriation, I don't have much to say. I don't really know much about the matter.
And also because I feel like when you think about it as well, especially for landlords who they are literally kind of like pouring everything into this building or this apartment that they're creating, right? So everything is kind of like cash up front. So I guess it's like a harder conversation to take to the landlords to say, oh yeah, instead of getting like 2 years or 1 year, they're going to be paying you like a month. But it's like, okay, what about all the cash already put? And then there's going to be interest rate hikes. So even if you go back to the renters to say, oh, well, you were paying 100K, you paid 100K last month. Next month it's going to be 250K. And then, you kind of like lose that business as well. So I guess it's a difficult thing to do.
You wanted to say something?
Some approximation of what she just said. It was just like if the landlord doesn't know that then 1 naira in his pocket today or her pocket is going to be worth anywhere close to 1 naira in a year or 2 years, then you can't ask them to accept monthly payments. It comes back to the.
I mean, I don't know what the model was. My thinking would be that Split would. I never interacted with Split. Just thinking about it right now, I locked down this building by giving the landlord an annual payment that he's used to, and then I give that money in credits to my monthly rentals so that I can maximize my return on that annual payment. Is that how it worked?
My understanding is that is what fiber did, and one of the issues that fiber faced, and I think one of the differences between
the problem would now be that I need to access a lot of capital.
You have to get on that risk.
Literally, what you're a finance house. You're not a real estate. You're actually like a fintech. You're a finance house.
So that was also the same model with Split as well, where they needed to give like a lot lot of credit to these landlords.
So that's the problem. So
But I think this particular case reminds me of this saying, and I don't know if it was Olumide Soyinbo that said it or who popularized it, where they said just because there's a gap in the market doesn't mean there's a market in the gap, right? Because if you think about all the similar startups that came before Split, so there was Fiber, there was also Muster, I believe, and I remember Fiber. I still lived in Abuja at the time when Fiber came out, and I was like, so you mean I can finally achieve my dreams of going to Lagos and paying rent monthly? Oh my God. Super excited. By the time, I never ended up moving to Lagos, but, I think maybe like 2 years after they were done or something like that. So I wonder, especially and also kind of like a takeaway from this, right? Because I know that there's probably a young man or woman sitting somewhere thinking, what fiber and split could not do,
I'm gonna do it.
be the one to do it.
I'm going to do it.
Like, what is your advice for this person thinking that now?
I actually wouldn't say they should shut it down.
Like we said, we said
Yeah.
Africa needs time.
Sometimes it's it might be too early to the market.
Yes.
Sometimes it might just be the right timing.
Yes.
I wouldn't say shut it down altogether.
I think we've even seen examples of that before.
There are proofs of the signs of people trying to do things multiple. Look at Jumia, for instance, when they started and they were doing cash on delivery. Now, even for Instagram vendors, they are taking their money before they deliver to you.
Cash in delivery is why e-commerce failed in Nigeria.
Instagram vendor that does not have the backing or the followership of Jumia. Now they're taking it. Sometimes it's really just timing and
Fun fact. If you've sent money to a MoneyPoint account or interacted with the iconic Sky Blue POSs, you've tapped into the 10 million businesses and individuals who use MoneyPoint to access seamless payments, banking, credit, and business management tools. Home to most of Nigeria's merchants, the Blue POSs power over $17 billion in monthly transactions. MoneyPoint launched Nigeria's first informal economy report in 2024 about the merchants that make up Nigeria's shadow economy. Check the link down below. Back to the show.
So, startup of the year, startup rankings, right? You know, it was a hard year for some startups, but I want to know from you guys, like, which startups came out on top? First of all, RiseVest acquired Hysa this year, and Hysa is an investment management startup out of Kenya. Very incredibly passionate founders that run Hysa, and decided to team up with RiseVest. And of course, RiseVest, we covered this in crossover show last year. They acquired Shaka, which is also an investment management startup as well. So that's two startups, right, under their belts, two startup acquisitions under their belts. OPay netted a $3 billion valuation this year. I feel like everywhere I go, there's OPay everywhere. I get into cabs, you know, ask for account number to transfer money to. All the cab drivers, most businesses have OPay accounts. MoneyPoint becoming Africa's latest unicorn, and of course, bagging a commercial bank license. So it seems like, you know, they're making like certain moves. And of course, you cannot walk into 9 out of 10 businesses or 8 out of 10 businesses without seeing their blue POS. Okay, and I think it was very genius as well for them to use that color.
Excellent lesson in branding.
Yeah, that was just like so wonderful. And of course, Move expanding to the US with the Waymo partnership. So, based on these 4 startups, you know, that kind of like did a lot of like incredible work this year, I'm going to start with you, Tosin. What startup came out on top for you? What's your startup of the year?
This is very hard because like the top 3, like I'm really, really, really super impressed. But I'm going to lean with RiseVest. It's in our space, investment tech space.
Okay.
I'm really impressed about all the work they've done over the past 18 months thereabouts. So they will take my money.
All right. Sarah, what about you?
It's a strong list, and lots of companies have done amazing things this year. Something I've noticed over the years is that a couple of African companies have tried to expand globally. You know, some of that is part of the de-risking conversation. You know, African startups in general, at pre-seed seed stage, we're talking about we're raising XYZ to expand to 3 markets. And it's like, you know, you haven't built the business in 1 yet, but there are good reasons for that. But most of these ventures have not yet succeeded. Lydia expanded to Eastern Europe, I believe, a couple of years ago. Paga, I believe, expanded to Ethiopia, and I saw a press release about Mexico. So different companies have sort of made a go at this, and just seen Move appear to expand successfully to India and now to the US. Does see, especially with an operationally intensive model. It seems like they're solving difficult problems, and I have to give them kudos for that.
Okay, so they're your startup of the year. Okay. Shaya, what about you?
RiseVest, for instance, takes a lot of my respect. Because and the particular reason why I mention RiseVest is that we've only known them to raise about $1 million, right? And they're doing so well in terms of how they've executed and able to now grow enough to acquire businesses in other verticals and add to their portfolio to become a really huge company. I respect that a lot. So, you know, the founder thinks very well about execution and how he does his financial management. There are also guys like OPay, like you said, MoneyPoint and Co. But there are also guys like Lemfi. Right? Lemfi has done an amazing job.
They were actually a startup of the year at Crossover Show last year, actually.
Oh, even this year,
Yeah.
From what I know, by way of privilege, they've done incredibly well.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And I hear they're also in the process of raising as well.
sure.
Not the pause on the shore.
Yeah,
Immediate
so,
trend.
So they're a bunch of great companies. I mean, anybody that even posted any sort of growth this year with like a lot of their operations being Nigerian.
Yeah.
I agree.
And of course, RiseVest is actually the one for me. RiseVest is my startup of the year, and not because I invested in them. This is
That's great.
bad.
Sure. So,
no bias, but shout out to them. This particular part, I'm very excited about. This is always like my favorite part of the crossover show. We're going to start with most exciting predictions for 2025. What's yours, Tosin?
We're going to see lots and lots of mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
So more startups are going to merge with each other in order to grow and expand, and mergers and
By
acquisition.
choice?
Either by choice or by force. Either ways, we're going to see more mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
it has a little bit of startup founder optimism in it, but I know that the Nigerian economy will experience some growth
Yeah.
or stability, either growth or stability, and
Yeah.
not so much of a decline. And what that would also mean for the market is that, people will be able to spend more, and then, other companies will grow. And so I expect a lot of stabilization in a lot of the monetary policy and fiscal policies of the Ministry of Finance and the CBN to start to show some positive results in 2025.
Okay. And you, Osaraman?
I might break the rule here. I don't know what will happen in 2025, but when I sort of reflect on the trajectory we're on as an ecosystem, Seye gave an example earlier of when the Chinevics and Rocket Internets of this world were really excited about Nigerian e-commerce. When they pulled out, say, circa 2015, things felt similar to how they feel right now for many founders. But that was the period in which, how some of our most exciting companies being founded. And so I'm just really excited to see what outcomes come from this. We've taken in capital, we've built some infrastructure. The ecosystem has expanded in multiple ways, including in impact and influence. I think there's going to be bigger outcomes in front of us, in addition to the challenges.
Okay. My prediction, and I'm not going to say it's exciting, I don't know if the end justifies the means, but Trump's presidency, I think, is going to be a net positive for just in terms of like capital injection into the ecosystem. I think we did see some of the trends kind of like trending upward when he was announced president, of course, with the low interest rates now, and even more like investor activity, right? I do think that we're going to see more like capital injection into the market. We're going to see more startups like raise money to support their business goals and like long-term business needs. And maybe like I would really love to see like an IPO, but in the local market. Like I want to see a startup like, just
there's
offer the public some shares.
There's been lots of talk about an IPO coming, so maybe 2025 is going to be that year.
Like I don't particularly care for NASDAQ or why are you laughing? Oh, sorry, man.
He gave me one very nasty side eye.
What was that about?
Which nonsense IPO?
No, but
Even local?
No. They're supposed to say
We're not asking for NASDAQ. We're not asking for...
In South Africa, maybe. In Nigeria, in Egypt, in other, I guess we have seen an IPO recently in Egypt, Fari.
Yes.
But liquidity on the continent is a significant challenge.
Yes.
And, that kind of needs to be sorted out before.
Yeah, but I mean...
if we see a local IPO for a heavily venture-funded startup from history, is it a win? I don't know. A lot of value has been lost.
Yeah.
But, a win is a win, right? Yeah. So
if you listed our biggest scale-ups on the continent now on any local stock exchange again, except for South Africa, they would automatically be one of the biggest companies on the exchange. That doesn't leave them with much room for growth. And so I'm not expecting a local IPO in the next year.
I know the CEO of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Temi Popola, has been, I feel like at this point, he's on his knees begging startups to like, please come. Like he's making all these concessions. He's like implementing policy that will make it easy for them. And I'm very curious as to why you have that smirk on your face. I feel like you have some insight. Insights.
Me, I'm very positive. Founders are one of the most optimistic people in the world.
You have to be optimistic. If you're not optimistic.
So I'm very positive. I'm actually not even being like snide at all.
Okay.
I expect, I mean, why is the stock market giving capital to anybody? But, whatever way that sort of works out into a good outcome, I'm here for it.
Okay. Tech personality of the year.
A lot of people did great stuff this year. I like Oluwatosin Olaseinde a lot.
Okay.
I think he's a great investor. Yeah. And also an executor. So, the guy has gone and started a company. And I was tweeting at him like, oh God, stay in your investor lane. I think GB is also great. GB is silent mostly, but he does a lot of support for helping to build the ecosystem. As in, it's insane and very intentional about it. So I respect people like that who clearly have their own struggles, but are also committed to, we need to make this thing work for Africa. And AK is also a great guy. AK has time to, do his work and also come and sit with you and think about stuff and say, okay, this is how we can collaborate to create value for the market.
Seye Bandele, this is your tech personality of the year.
Definitely you.
Oh.
If I was to give another suggestion, I think the leadership of Chicken Republic did a lot to support, I guess, the food delivery ecosystem this year.
Okay.
And by that, I mean just fundamentally like recognizing the value in delivery and recognizing where the winds are moving and collaborating with the players in the space. I think it's an important, I guess, step for the industry so far. I'm excited for what comes of that next year.
Okay.
I'm interested as to why you also had Fatu on your list.
She created this forum for us to have this conversation. She's chronicling the tech ecosystem. I think she's the tech personality of the year.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Person.
It is Damilola Olokisusi. She's the founder of Shotlers. I'm so impressed. I remember when I moved back to Nigeria, I was living in Johannesburg. I used to use public buses and there was no Uber then, right? And even when Uber came, it's quite expensive. Not many people could afford it. And then she built this company where it's like Uber for buses. Yes. You have AC, you have Wi-Fi. It's nice and the price is fair. So, right. And they just recently launched like new CNG buses, just the constant innovation, the growth over the years. Amazing. She's my tech personality for the year.
My tech personality of the year is your namesake, Tosin Olaseinde. I saw this video about just when they announced their raise and their unicorn status. And I think it was kind of like a surprise video, but it was literally them chronicling, like how they've built the company, how they've built MoneyPoint. I think one of the things that has inspired me about their journey and their growth is just taking advantage of opportunities, because I think that moment that CBN implemented that policy, they were very quick to just like capture that market. And not a lot of people are able to actually spot opportunities and take it. So, and of course, execute. And they became a unicorn this year, making it number 8. I feel like, we can have more unicorns in Africa, but, even that feat alone makes him my tech personality of the year.
When MoneyPoint was team up, I interviewed him at, I believe it was TechPoint Builds conference, and he was very opinionated about why founders didn't need to raise venture capital.
Are you serious?
Yes. And one of the things that they were most proud of, and it's worth being proud of, is that they were bootstrapped up until that point.
Wow.
And so when I saw that, I guess, they had spotted a different opportunity and, the flexibility to say, okay, now we're going to, I guess, take this other path, I think has earned my respect in some way, I think.
And many people struggle with that change and that switch. So that's brilliant.
This is my favorite segment of the show, Tech Product of the Year. Right, and I'm going to start only because I love food so much, and anything that enables and facilitates that process for me, I'm sorry, especially for like the last year, chow deck.
So my tech product for the year is, ta-da! I'm going to say Money Africa Kids. We launched an app to educate children about money, and we're getting users, we're getting traction. So for me, that's my tech product for the year.
Yes, my tech product of the year was PayHR.
Of course.
Especially because of, and to be honest, it really is. I don't need to think about any other product, because what we were at the beginning of this year, so different now from what we are.
Yeah.
This at the beginning of this year, we were HR product, right? That helped you manage your staff and then pay them. But today, people are using the platform that we built to pay their employees across the world, and they are receiving the money instantly.
I love it. I love it. Oh, sorry, what about you?
Tech product of the year.
Yes.
That's a hard question to answer because the product I've most enjoyed using this year is not yet public, and so I can't talk about it. That said, like you said, I think the Chowdeck team has done some great work this year with their product. I've had reason to order lots of delivery this year. From Chowdeck, Global Food Court, to everybody, because I was working on a series. We've built great digital technology products, and I think the products I'm most excited to use, experience, understand right now are those that interface with the real world. Where, for example, you now need to worry about whether or not a restaurant owner input certain pieces of data correctly, such that you have the right menu, or whether the inventory as listed on the app exactly matches the inventory that's in the real world. Like those things I think are most interesting right now, and because of that, I'd say Chowdeck, Global Food Court, and the rest of them.
Okay, so the consensus I hear here is there's 2 Chowdecks and then there's 2 individual ones. So I guess
Chowdeck and others.
Chowdeck one.
I mean, what this teaches me is that I need to use Chowdeck more.
Are you eating mostly at home?
I'm married with 2 kids. Yeah, but when I'm at work, somebody has the job to buy food. I eat the same thing every day, so I don't even know.
What do you eat every day?
Rice, beans, plantain, and fish.
No moi.
Lovely.
No moi.
Lovely.
So yeah, I need to. If it's such a life-changing product, I need to.
I don't know about life-changing, but it's it does what it's supposed to do.
In general, I'd say it's nice to feel love and intention going into a product.
Nice.
Always.
Yes.
And I'm not necessarily saying this about any one specific player, but it's always good to see when somebody thought about.
We know the way
but somebody thought about, what is this experience going to be like in a beyond the core functionality. Those are the things that I try to look out for. And the real competition for a Chowdeck in terms of, I guess, the real competition is going to be the chefs you hire and pay them on a monthly basis to sort out your food.
That's what it is.
They will, in a similar way.
I see my privilege now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law lives with me. He's in culinary school.
There you go.
Your own personal Chowdeck.
Exactly. Have your personal Chowdeck.
Yeah, just send me brochure. Please send me 200K. Sure.
And you come back to yummy meal.
Yes, no. Yesterday I had salmon on a bed of mashed potatoes.
Oh, no way.
No space.
I'm flexible.
Yeah, veggies and broccoli and carrots and stuff. That's what I had.
I love it. Okay.
That's not Chowdeck.
So our tech product of the year is Chowdeck.
Nice. I agree, actually.
All right, fantastic. Okay. Thank you so much, Tosin, Osariman, Seye, for coming on the Crossover Show this year. It's been such a fun conversation and very exciting. And I do hope that our exciting predictions come true next year. So thanks so much for joining me. And thank you again to our sponsor, Money Point, Africa's latest unicorn, on sponsoring this show and sponsoring this very important conversation. So see you next year for Crossover 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.